right. Well, welcome everyone to Wellspring Wednesday, to our conversation with the art team here at Unity, where we're going to be hopefully drawing some connections between the ends, so the ministry of this church, and how it gets expressed through art. I am not supposed to be here tonight, so I'm mostly just like welcoming everybody. I was supposed to be at a poetry seminar. This is connected, I promise. One of the things that's really, really easy to do when we've had months like we've had in Minnesota is to get so caught up in the day-to-day events and tragedies and stress cycle that we just build up cortisol and build up cortisol and until we eventually crash. And one of the ways that we get through that is by recognizing beauty in the world. One of the ways that we do that at Unity is through art. So we're going to be talking mostly about visual art, but I was trying to find an opening reading, and I pulled a book of poetry from Nancy Schaefer, now of blessed memory. And as a chalice lighting, I actually just want to read her introduction to this, because this is what she writes about her art form. The poems gathered here were written for use in worship services, an ordination, a religious education class, for the comfort of friends, in response to spiritual direction, world events, seminary, and simple daily happenings. Many of them began out of my need to find words and form for joy. All of them began out of my longing to know a particular thing or feeling more fully. Each in its birthing has taught me something about joy, for if I listen well, poems come with a wholeness, a truth, a comfort I could not on my own invent. They hold beauty, even if they also hold anguish. Poems come to me as gifts. I offer them back as gifts. So with that, we'll light our chalice. Pam, if you would. So, one of the first things that you notice walking the halls at Unity is the art here. And it was certainly one of the first things I noticed coming into this building. And then again, just working here, seeing the art change from month to month, and now surrounded by art from our congregants. But what we wanted to do tonight is actually invite the art team to be in dialogue, originally with the executive team, and then I bailed, and now I'm back. So it's mostly going to be with Laura, about how they make some of the decisions they make and how their work is a ministry of the church. It's one of the things that we ask pretty much every group of volunteers here, is to be able to connect the volunteering that they do to the ministry, to the ends of the church, to make the connection explicit between their faith and the work that they're doing here. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Laura to introduce the art team, and I'm going to get out of the way.
Thank you, Oscar. What great framing. We really appreciate it. Could I have all members who are here from the art team tonight just stand up, because I want you to know just how many art team members are here. Thank you. In addition to look at all these fabulous people, a round of applause for the work that they do would be very much appropriate. Thank you so much. And then I just want to give our panel a chance to introduce themselves. They're going to tell you their name, why they chose to be on the art team, and what gifts they bring to their art team service. And I'm not on the art team exactly. I'm the staff liaison, but I'll start. I'm Laura Park. I use pronouns she and her. I serve as your executive director. And it is my privilege to be the staff liaison with this art team. The depth of their thinking about how art connects with ends is just amazing to be with on a regular basis. So
I'm Paul Rogney. I am on the art team because Marty Rossman twisted my arm. It was about 2010, 12, must have been about 2011. And I've been there ever since because I just love the experience and it brings me a lot of satisfaction. I have a hobby of photography, and so that's kind of a thing for me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pam Satry. I've been a member of the art team for 12, maybe 13 years now. Paul twisted my arm as soon as he got on the, apparently. Um, my profession was in graphic design, so I've been able to bring those skills to the team by creating a variety of flyers, posters, signs, forms, name badges, whatever the need's been over the years. I love being on this team. It's just wonderful to be able to keep my creative juices flowing after I retired and to feed my passion for art and doing something hopefully good for Unity.
Hi, I'm Maura Williams. I've been a member of this congregation a long time, and pretty much as long as I can remember, I've been on the art team. Off and on, I took some years off over the 40 years, but I mean, I can remember when we built the second floor, the Elliott Wing, and talking about getting that ready for art. So it's been a while. Also, I am an artist, and this is one of my favorite venues to show. So about every 5 years, I have a show here, and um, it's great being on the art team and having the perspective from what we do and being an artist. I'm also a member of the racial justice team, which informs our conversations here. So.
So the panel wanted to start this conversation with you, actually, so that you get a chance to talk first. And the question that I'm going to give you, 3, 5 minutes at your table groups, how would you describe the role of art at Unity Church? How would you describe the role of art at Unity Church? Take 5 minutes, talk about it at your table groups, and then we'll ask for input. I am sorry to interrupt what sounds like really interesting conversations, but I'm going to do it anyway because you'll get a chance to talk in your table groups again. Andrea here has a microphone and she's going to wander around. Raise your hand and tell me some of the interesting things your group talked about. How would you describe the role of art at Unity Church? Okay, tell us the boring things you talked about. Hold on just a sec. You know what, Mike? I'm just going to swap it out with you while they. Oh, now try it again. Heidi's got it.
It's an opportunity for local artists to be seen and heard. Yeah, it works much better when you turn me on over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else has an insight?
Well, this might be similar to what Mike just said, but having been here for, I don't know, is it 9 years? Almost 10, my husband tells me. It's just been really interesting to watch the change in the art that is being shown. And I think that you're working towards Unity's ends through art is being very well manifested in the choice of the different artists that have been showing their work here. And I'm really grateful for it. I think it's an indication, I think, of the growth of a congregation when they can start putting their attention outside of our four walls and highlighting the work of other people who don't look like us.
Thank you. You got back there to Mary. Oh,
Yeah, I noticed, I guess when I first heard that the emphasis and the preference was going to be for artists of color and people that aren't white. And I started looking at the work, and the fact that we have so much of it, it's not like it's, oh, here is a Black artist or here's some Black art. Well, no, this is this Black artist, and this is this Native artist, and it goes past the types and the, just the whole genres, and of course, duh, but you have to have the experience before you can really like, oh yeah, of course. So
thank you. Mary had her hand up back there.
So I give tours at the MIA, and one of the things that has been so important for me in being in an environment where there's a lot of art, like there is at an art museum, is that it reminds me that art appears or is ever present in times when things are horrifying or so difficult that they almost cannot be endured. And yet there are examples from 300 years ago or 200 or even 6 weeks ago of horrible, awful things happening, that people created something that was beautiful and could enable others to endure. And I think about the art that we see on our walls throughout the year, not just today. I haven't had a chance to look at this art particularly, but that what we see throughout our years here, to see works on the walls or music in the sanctuary or poetry or readings, things that someone has written or painted or created, sometimes from a dark, dark place inside, or from a response to horrifying events in their outer world, or even just a personal crisis that they're enduring. And that art is a vehicle for them, perhaps, to express and enable that to be rectified or somehow to gain some serenity or peace through it. But also it enables us to recognize that people have endured immense hardship, and yet beauty endures and is salvific, if you will, for the rest of us to take in and behold.
Thank you so much, Mary. Boy, it's almost as if I planted you all because that was such a lovely way of introducing what we're going to cover tonight. I mean, you talked about the evolution of the art and how it has changed over the years, and that's going to be the first thing that Paul talks about is the history of how the art team has been thinking about the ends and the art. And then we're also going to talk about the criteria that the art team uses in order to choose pieces, which is something that Barbara, you touched on when you talked about the role of art here at the church. How does the art team decide what will be on our walls? We're also going to talk about the connections with the artists and how that has grown. And Mike, when you were talking about how this is an opportunity for us to, display local artists, those relationships have deepened over the years, and the ways in which that reflects the ends as well. And Mary, I think everything is about enduring and beauty in endurance. And I hope that you'll continue to find that tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul for the first part about the history.
So when we think about art and the ends, I start sort of at a big picture. And a lot of ways to look at art, but art can be a window or it can be a mirror or both. A window so I can see what the artist shows us and what's their vision, what are they trying to show, what are they saying, and a mirror. And this is often where you have personal connection. Do you see yourself represented in whatever way it is, emotionally, visually? And so that's one of the things that art can bring to the table. When the ends came out in 2018, we were on the art team at the time, and it struck us that we should dive into it wholeheartedly and see what it meant to us and what we were doing as a team. Oops. So we did a full assessment, walked around. We had around 90 pieces of art, which is kind of stunning in itself. There was nothing in storage at that time, and we still don't have art in storage. This involved art that's paintings, drawings, etchings, sketch. What else did we have? Photography, sculpture, a few, and then we also have documents that are framed and hanging on the walls that are meaningful visually as well as what they're saying. So there's a lot of art. There was nothing wrong with these pieces. They were all good quality. They were well appreciated. Many of them, most of them, were gifted to the church by either the artists themselves or members of the church or friends of the church. What we found is we had, this is the part where we needed to work. One Japanese American artist, one Chinese artist, one Muslim refugee from Indonesia, had 2 pieces, and one Jewish artist. And the rest were all white. And I'm white, not ashamed of that, but I'm missing something. So we set out to see what we could do. We also, not just looking at the artists, though, we were looking at what's being shown, what's being represented, because that's important too. So we had some photography of African Americans and Native Americans. We had a Chinese artist who had done a mural in China, and then we had a large serigraph of that. We had a poem by Emma Lazarus that's on the Statue of Liberty called The New Colossus, and it's timely today because it's about immigration. We had an environmental protection theme art. We had the Muslim women in a photo and our entire collection of partner church pieces. So there was diversity there in what we were showing. After 2018, when the ends came out, the art team said we're going to to be more deliberate, more strategic, and we're going to go out and add diversity to what we were showing, both in the permanent collection and what we show in the Parish Hall. So since then, 18 pieces of art have been added to the permanent collection. And some of that came from funds that we get when artists sell some work. We get a small commission. Some of it came from gifts from people's estates. So since then, those 18 pieces are throughout, and I'll show a few. We also brought in to exhibit in the Parish Hall 26 artists over the, what is that, last 7 years, 26 artists of diverse backgrounds and identities of all sorts. We had an Afghan refugee, we had African-American artists, Jewish artists, Karen culture artists, we had mono photo exhibit, we had Native American artists, artists with disabilities, Palestinian artists, incarcerated artists, Russian immigrant artists, and Asian American artists. So we've had this effort going on now for the last several years because it brings the diversity and richness of art and artists to our church. So that's kind of the status. And Pam's going to talk. Are you going to introduce Pam?
Did you want to show
pictures?
Do you want the criteria or the pictures?
About process and mention the criteria, but it's not going to be my.
Okay. Hold on then. We're going to look at some photos. First of all, right over here are 2 pieces recently acquired. It's kind of poor representation to show just a picture because it doesn't do them justice. So on the left is a recent piece by a Saudi Arabian woman who emigrated here. She felt that she couldn't express her art in Saudi Arabia due to the restrictions on showing human form, as well as her story, which is the title of her piece. That's the one on the left. The one on the right, Maura will talk about later. So I'm going to just let you see the visual of that piece. But this piece up in the upper left is by Amel Shahzad. He's a Afghan refugee, came here in the he was 16 years old, and then went to McAllister and became a professional artist. Over on the upper right is the Karen weaving man's shirt, and they exhibited here, and we love this piece. They're coming back this summer or May. So you'll see again that culture, and they're under threat right now. They are under temporary protective status, which the Trump administration wants to cancel. So they're worried. And there's Hen El Masar's piece here. Simone Spruce did the painting upper left. Its theme is immigration. So it's hanging down in the hall, and all of her paintings referenced a song, and the song is out on her piece. So take a look. On the lower left is a longtime artist from the Rondo community. She grew up here, and she's now older than me, so she's been here a long time. That's Rose Smith, and she and her husband are both artists. They went to New Orleans right after Hurricane Katrina and developed art, paintings, and collages based on the experiences of the people there. Upper right, they were just here we had 3 artists, a Native American artist, you might remember that, exhibit this fall. That's Carly Bearseason's piece, and wonderful story she told at a Wellspring Wednesday about her experiences and boarding camp stories and so on. The sculpture here sits in the center room. This is a Ghana artist, and it was gifted to Unity by Sani, if you know Sani. He was so appreciative of the welcome he got here that he wanted to give us something. We commissioned a young Black woman who's an artist in the Rondo area, and she works with a lot of schools, and we commissioned her to work with us to develop the mural. It's up in the foot room. representing the chalice. It's called Chalice of Many Cultures. And what she did, we had 20 volunteers from church. She didn't do the art. She just led us through the process of creating this. If you look close, each little piece of that represents some culture somewhere. And they're not copies, they're inspired by. So it wasn't like, let's just copy this, copy that, and then it was pieced together. Lower left is, I think, a member of the church, actually, Heather Friedley, and she's a local activist, a snow sculptor. She's been in the news a bit, cancellation of some snow sculptures you might have read about. Anyway, this is a scene from Crosby Farm Park. If you've ever walked there in the fall, you might recognize it. Over on the right is Ronaldo Diaz, who he fled Venezuela because of being gay. He knew he wouldn't, or was it Venezuela? Anyway, because he couldn't expose who he was. A wonderful painter. We have a Hmong story cloth up here. So when the Hmong refugees were in the refugee camps in Thailand, they developed this art skill to create these story cloths. It was not traditional, and now it is. Gordon Coons, a Ojibwe artist, who is here again this fall, and the bear is his clan image, teacher, protector, and forgotten the other three features. And then one of our church members here did this piece on the right, on the lower left. That's Sam Green. And she was looking at the Tibetan Buddhist traditions and developing this piece. And there's a long story. You should go down the hall and read it because it's too much. We'd be here for a long time. So, when under consideration,
I just want to do a brief transition. You've noticed the large amount of diversity that the art team has brought to the permanent collection and to the artists that exhibit in Parish Hall. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about is how does that happen and how does that happen in relationship? And Pam is going to talk about the process by which the art team finds and chooses its artists.
Several years ago, we did make some drastic changes to our process for selecting art for the Parish Hall. And of course, the majority of the art for the permanent collection does come from the artists who exhibit in the Parish Hall, correct? So yeah, we took our process. We wanted to, it was very laborious and long and complicated, and we wanted to streamline it. We wanted our efforts to be more focused and targeted, and I think we've managed to do that. So our process is more efficient and more effective. So I wanted to try to illustrate that a little bit better by giving you an overview of the evolution of this process. So before this big change, for many, many years, and all of you who are on the art team will know this, and I'm skipping many steps because I'm trying to condense it. So, but we would start, well, the first step is always to start by finding and recruiting the artists to exhibit. And what we did for many years is we would send several hundred emails to galleries and art studios, co-ops, individual artists all around the greater Twin Cities and beyond. And these emails included a letter inviting them to exhibit, as well as a 4-color flyer that told them a little bit about Unity and promoted the benefits of exhibiting here. Not trusting that people would actually get these emails, let alone read them, we also sent several hundred invitations via US Post. And of course, that involved printing, folding, stuffing, addressing, and it was extremely labor intensive. And honestly, the majority of the work fell on several people, namely Paul. And I hope we've thanked you enough over the years for all that you did, because you're still here. And so we tried to get these steps done by the end of March because we had a May 1st deadline for the applications to be in. And people would, to apply, they would go to our website, fill out an application, and then send photos of their art. And I think we probably averaged, I don't know, 30, 35. At one point we had maybe 50 applications. And once all of those applications are in, then the art team would spend several very, very long sessions reviewing all of the applications, discussing them, reviewing the photos that were sent in. And now would be a good time for the slide on the criteria. Thank you. And yes, we've had criteria for years, well before we had the official ends. We always had guidelines to work from when selecting art. We weren't just picking our favorites or shooting from the hip. So that's important to understand. But once the art team all got together and we were looking at all this stuff, then we would, based on the criteria that you see here and using a rating scale from 1 to 9, each art team member would rate each artist, and 1 being totally inappropriate or unacceptable for an exhibit at Unity, and 9 being exceptional, I think it was. And because art is so subjective, our ratings within the team varied greatly. For an example, one of the art team members might give an artist, well, I think a 3 or something because they didn't feel they had command of the craft or they weren't as skilled quality. Another art team member might give that same artist a 7 or an 8 because the message that they conveyed was so powerful and impactful. So, but in a juried selection, the top scores are the ones that we chose. So we would choose maybe the top 12, sometimes 15, 16, and if we felt we could pair them. And then we left a lot of good art, a lot of diverse art actually that we weren't able to use. So anyway, and then once we selected the art that we were going to use and we scheduled it for the whole year, this is when we did exhibits every month. We did 12 a year. We have since started last year with every 2 months, I think it is, which has worked much better. But at the time, we had to slot 12 different months of exhibits. And once we decided who would exhibit, those that did not get chosen received a kind rejection letter. And then, then those that were selected would be paired with an art team member who would serve as their liaison through the entire process, and usually with several assistants as well. And it's so critical that the liaison develops a personal relationship with the artist because they're working with them for a very long time. Depending on the scheduling, it could be 3 to 4 months or an entire year because we work so far ahead. We are right now starting to look into the artist for 2027. So, and that relationship building begins immediately by contacting the artist and congratulating them, telling them about the process, the different steps involved, working with them on scheduling key things like the installation, the removal, reception, meet the artist, meeting them here so they can see the parish hall before they install, that type of thing. So we want all of the artists to have a very good experience exhibiting here, and it's very rewarding for all of us as well to develop that relationship and work with the artists. So that part of the process, working with the liaison and developing the personal relationship, is the same with our new streamlined process. But what we did is we cut out the first very time-consuming steps, and we kind of spread the workload around more balanced so it didn't all fall on Paul. So now each art team member is charged with doing some research, trying to find artists whose work aligns with our end statements, and then they can research either via online or by actually going out, going to galleries, going to studios, going to the art crawl, art attack, whatever the case may be. And that relationship building process could start much earlier if they start talking to artists, getting their cards, telling them about Unity, asking them if they're at all interested. And then they bring all that information back to the team, and the entire team still makes the decision, but it's more of a discussion on which artist best can support Unity's ends versus the juried rating selection. So I think that about covers it. And a good example of this is last year we had several really targeted exhibits. We had a nature-themed exhibit, and we had, working with Act for the Earth team, we had a Wellspring Wednesday, and Clean Water Action gave a program. We also had an exhibit of social justice art, I believe, and then the indigenous artists as well. So we feel that this change has really been effective. And I wanted to say, my mouth is suddenly so dry. But just kind of a nice side note, I was the liaison for the January exhibit, and when I was helping one of the artists take down the art and help her get it to her car, she said, you know, I really like your church. I'm going to bring my husband to one of the Sunday services. And because when the artists are here for a Meet the Artist event, they're here for an entire Sunday morning, so they either hear the service in here or they might even go in there. So that was kind of nice to hear. So go, Oscar. Thank you.
So you've heard about the art team's desire to increase the diversity of the artists and the art in the permanent collection and the exhibits. You've heard how that changed the process the art team used to find artists, develop a relationship with them early, and bring them into exhibits that combined talents into themes. I'm going to turn it back to you all now at your table groups. And what I'd like to invite you to do is take what you've heard and connect it to the ends on your tables. Paul mentioned how the ends in 2018 changed the way the art team approached this. And we've put both the 2018 ends and the 2025 ends on the handouts that's on your table. If you have not enough for your table, I think we've got a couple of extra around. Here's what I want you to talk about in your table group. What connections are you seeing between the artwork and the art selection process and our ends? What connections are you seeing between the artwork, the art selection process, and the ends? And again, you know, take 7 minutes and talk that over, and then we'll ask for reactions and feedback. Yeah, just don't put fine wine in the description. I think somebody said, but wine and cheese, I think is great. Hey, I'm going to try and pull you back again. So Andrea here has a microphone again. We'd love to hear. Yeah, Teresa.
We on?
Hi there. One of the things that I just want to say that was not mentioned, but I want to highlight.
Teresa, could you pull the microphone closer to your mouth? There,
Yep,
thank you.
there. Okay, ready? One of the things that I know we didn't yet comment on, and I don't know if it's under the umbrella of the art team, but I also want to point out that the incredible art that's down on the lower level, and that the multi-generational piece of the footroom mural that was created by multi-generational artwork along with the murals that are downstairs. But there's incredible art in many of the rooms that was created by groups together, families together. And I just think that's really awesome.
It's a good thing to go to the lower level.
Just to point out that in March, we will install in the center room art from the RE program. So it's in the works.
RE, for those of you who are not in the know, is religious education. To you, Kent.
Decades ago, I learned from my mother the song "Bread and Roses" about the women's suffrage, or a song from the women's suffrage movement about needing, as they're fighting for justice and fighting for the right to vote. That's the bread. We need the right to vote. We need justice. We need equity. We need compassion. But we also need roses. We need basically art and beauty. And if you're serious all the time about just fighting for the justice, which is needed, what kind of joy are you having in your life, or what kind of purpose or meaning, and you can find great power and meaning in that justice work, but it's sort of like, what are you doing with it then? It's sort of, and I forget the woman who said, if you're not going to dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution. It's sort of a similar vein, where it's like, if you're not going to have that joy and that beauty, what's the point? And so with the ends, it's all over there, where it's like communities of joy, care, and belonging, of being broken open, and art does that, and the joyous vision of a beloved community, all those kinds of things. And then in the values, it's wonder. So I think art does that as well.
Thank you. What else? It was just too stunning. It was like, we're all done now. We've heard from Canton. Yeah, summarized everything. All right, we're gonna. Anything else? Well, we're gonna go on to something even more challenging in the questions we're gonna ask you. And I'm gonna turn it over to Maura.
Thank you. So I get to talk about one of my favorite things about being on the art team, which is when we're reviewing either an upcoming show and looking at the pieces that are going to be included, or we're talking about acquiring something for the permanent collection. And there are times when there's a piece that comes up and we are looking at it in relation to our ends, and some issues show up. So I'm going to show several different pieces that we have debated, and I seriously mean debated, because we have emails that go back and forth They get pretty intense. They're very thoughtful. People don't agree with each other. And it's really a wonderful kind of learning experience, both in being able to kind of argue our case and to understand where somebody else is coming from also. So the first piece we're going to look at, why in the world would we have this up, right? When we start talking about ends. So this is a piece by Cyrus Dallin, created in 1913. It was donated to this congregation by a member of the Ames family in 1926. And it has lived in the Ames Chapel until recently. So while you were all talking at your tables, we were talking about before we started looking at our collection, as it relates to the ends, we were talking about how art around here was like decor. It was part of the interior design. You know, it's like what goes above the couch in the center room, and you know, we did that. But then why would we take a second look at something like this in relation to the ends? And I would ask for suggestions. Pretend you're on the art team. What would you say about this piece?
Mr. Martin wants to say something.
Yeah.
Multiculturalism and anti-racism.
Yeah, can you say more about that? What do you mean? Like, what about it?
Do I really need to? I mean, it speaks to me about somebody with a different worldview being in relation to their spirit. And yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Steps in. I look at that and I wonder who is the artist. I don't know the artist. Given the date, I'm going to guess the artist was not Native American. And then that raises the question in my mind, is this cultural appropriation? Is it a white representation of Indian spirituality? Those are questions I have. It might be totally legitimate. You know, if it's done by a Native artist, then yes.
Thank you. Sally's dying to say something over there.
I am. You can read what accompanies the description of that piece of art. Cyrus Dallin grew up in the West among a tribe. I can't remember what the tribe was, but he was friends with all those people in the tribe. He played with the kids. When his tribe went to Washington, he accompanied them on that trip. The full-size statue is outside the Boston Museum of, the Boston Public Library.
Museum of Fine Arts in Boston.
But Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. And it's sentimental to me because it lived in our chapel and on the altar in the chapel. And the religious education director at the time, Elizabeth Whitman, would talk about different ways to pray. And this is one way. So it has a depth, but you have to research. You have to research.
Yes. Thank you for all that background. That was great. Yeah, so some of the things that you said, Anna, were certainly the fact that it's a white artist rather than a Native American artist who created this image. You know, we think about stereotypes of indigenous people. But we also realize that this was done in 1913, and so any piece of art, it communicates whatever you perceive from the art itself, but it's also a reflection of its time. And at that early time, we can presume that it was pretty unusual, for any artist, especially Western white artists, to be doing any portraits of indigenous people. And Sally, you talked about his personal experience, which makes it kind of understandable, because the images, it's a little idealistic. He's kind of known for his images of indigenous people. And and the other thing is he was Unitarian. So he has a lot of reasons to be here. This is no longer in the Ames Chapel. Decided to move it. How many people know where it is now? Pretty much everybody? Okay, yeah, there. Yes, and it was restored in 2016. It also is a good piece to have in a collection because it has some value to it as a collectible item. One of the funny things that I read about was that the reins on that piece of sculpture wouldn't stay on. So I hear that, Laura, you're kind of the holder of those reins. Do you know that? Yeah, so another part of your job you didn't know about. Yeah, you'll have to research that. Okay, let's move to the next one. A lot of reactions. Okay, if you were a member of the art team, and this was part of an exhibit that an artist was going to include it in an exhibit, how would you respond to this? What would be some of your thoughts? Nobody has thoughts?
Problem is that I have a lot of thoughts on a lot of things.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's, again, similar to the previous piece, like who is the artist? Are they white? Are they a person of color? Context matters. What's the whole exhibit doing, and how does this piece fit in the exhibit? I think it's certainly one of those things that breaks me open, just even seeing it briefly, in a way I wouldn't typically describe as being broken open, but I think a big piece for me would be the position of the artist, like where the background of the artist. Again, if it's a white person, that's a very different feeling for it than if it were a person of color. I guess that's enough for now.
We need to have all the stuff on the.
All right, if I was on the art team and I was presented with this image, the first thing that really jumps out at me, obviously, is the robed figures. All right, so I already know something about the Ku Klux Klan, both the early incarnation after the Civil War and then the re-emergence after, just before the First World War. So that's really shocking just to see that in an image in this present day, because that's represents what, 100, 160 years ago. But there's a juxtaposition. There's several juxtapositions in this image that strike me. And I'm thinking of this now, and I don't even know anything about who this person is. I don't know anything about their motivation or why they chose this. But if you look on the right-hand side, there looks to be an African-American runner. And the first association that I make in my mind is Jesse Owens, who competed in the 1936 Olympics in Berlin, which was sponsored by the Nazis, who had a racialized view of the world. And the fact that Owens was present and he won 4 gold medals, that was an affront to the Nazi regime, because he was a black man who had stood up to a bunch of white people who were trying to divide the world by race. But there's also something really strange, which is this deconstructed figure
I think as I look at it more, right in the middle of the figure, right in the middle of the piece, it looks like they're running right into the frame of the picture. And I can't quite, it's only the lower part of their body, so their torso is missing. I can't quite understand what these robed figures are doing. Are they just hanging around and just kind of conversing? And why are the backs of some of their backs displayed and others don't seem to be covered? So there's more mystery and just an oddity about why some of these figures were juxtaposed. The colors are very striking. I mean, they and the white also just really pops, so that really draws your attention. But I would now I'm kind of curious. The artist has my attention. I would want to know more about why did they construct this composition the way they did, and what were they trying to convey, and what were they trying to get out of the viewer.
Thank you. That's a lot of great observation. I want to give you a little more information. I don't know if this is what he titled it when he showed it here. On his website, he called this piece "The Killing of Ahmaud Arbery." So if you remember that case of the runner in a neighborhood in Georgia who was chased and murdered by 3 men. I'm also going to read to you, we eventually decided not to show this piece, and the artist was informed of that, and he wrote this back to the art liaisons here. He said, and evidently there were 2 paintings, I don't remember the other one. "The 2 paintings that you have decided not to show indeed were in part painted to make people uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable with murder. The fact that the committee is, quote, uncomfortable, quote, with this is an example of why we are where we are in this state and in this country. Silence is consent. This is happening in America. So easy to show faraway Gaza, so hard to confront our own neighborhood." So that's a valid point of view, right? So, no, he's not. I'm just going to play with this a little more.
So I'm noticing just the perspective. So, I think about the Eyes on the Prize series, where you suddenly saw the camera flipped out toward the police that were coming at the protesters, and so you got the perspective of the person, and so the perspective here, it sort of looks like you're looking in from the Klansman perspective, but not totally. So it's an interesting mixture. I don't know what to make of that, but I guess because the white hoods are so prominent, that still sort of dominates that we're standing with the Klans people.
This is like an art appreciation class. Loving it. So we are a liberal congregation, right? We can deal with the discomfort. Why would we as a team say no to this? Children, somebody said? Yes? What else? Yes, right.
Can you repeat that?
Yes, we share our space with a lot of different groups. So, including the Circle of Peace, right? So on Monday night, I was here Monday, there's like 40, 60 people here. Many of them are high school youth. Many of them are African American. They know they're in a church. They don't know anything about this church. They don't know what we believe. This artist clearly is working from a very white-centric point of view, but if you put yourself in the shoes of a young Black man who has perhaps experienced trauma, that could be very much affected by something like this. This is not the beloved community, so even though we can relate to it, we cannot have something here that would be so uncomfortable for other people. Okay, so this is a piece, David Amdur, called Monster. We actually let this piece be in the show. Why would we accept this piece? Any ideas? When was the show? Within the last 2 years. It was part of a group show. I can't remember. Yeah. Heidi.
Well, as a predominantly white church, all of the people in it are white. And I'm not sure who the monster is unless it's just a white guy.
It's
but Putin?
Putin.
Yeah. So that I see could be part of it. That, nothing without us is part of it, and we are white people. So I don't know if that's it, but that was the first thing that came to mind for me.
Yeah, thank you. That you can't. The color's not real good, but that is a Ukrainian flag. So this is obviously a very, very editorial piece, just like the last one was. But we can kind of hold this at a distance. Another thing about it, I can remember when it was here, it was on that wall right over there, and it's a very small piece, and it was up high, so there was some discussion about, is it going to be hard for kids? I don't think kids, even noticed it. So, so we let that one stay. We do try, we don't want to try to be censoring police. We want to give as much credit to the artists as we can and let them do what they intend to do. But there are times when we just have to look at things in light of our ends and say, is this who we are, and is this what we want to share with people? So the last one we're going to look at is this, and you can see the piece right over there. Danielle Day is the artist. So this was a little bit different in that the art committee decided we wanted to include a piece from this exhibit in our permanent collection, and it was an exhibit, I forget the name of the organization, do you know? Midwest Special Services. So they had art programs for people with disabilities. So any ideas why we talked about this one? So there's kind of an ongoing discussion just in kind of art generally about naive art and art by people who may be disabled in some way. That is, should you use the same criteria for quality and how you judge work for all artists? Does that make sense? Yeah. So with this show, it's interesting because the art team had so many different ideas about which pieces, and nobody agreed really. So we just had to go with the one that got the most votes, and that was this one. I don't know if we chose to say something on the identification that goes with this piece about the artist. Do you know?
We only described that she was from this program, and then she had quoted, she's almost nonverbal and speaks through her art, which is how she described what she does. And so it's just charming to meet. We had a reception in the center room with the artists. There were 4 or 5 of them, and so different from each other, each with their own talents, their own vision for what to say with their art. And so we thought this represented not just her, but just that whole program that's helping these individuals express themselves individually.
So I just want to say that that this experience of being on the art team and really talking about the ends and how they manifest and what we do has really been a great and continues to be a good exercise for us in kind of understanding how we live our values.
One last thing before Pam, talking about art as beauty is true. A lot of it is and joyful, but as you can see, there's also a place for art that's provocative and has something to say. And we try to represent that side of art as well and bring that kind of richness, diversity, whoever the artist is or whatever they're trying to say. Oh, by the way, there's 13 of us, not just us. So if you want to join.
Okay. So to close our program today, we wanted to kind of leave you with this thought about, and I know many of you already do this, I can tell from your comments today, thinking about the last line, art as a verb instead of a noun. Art is so much more than just as you know, a pretty picture hanging on a wall. It's very dynamic. Art always does something to us. It always does something for us. So we challenge you to encourage you and challenge you to try to see art through this new lens with fresh eyes, and certainly look at it, see the subject matter, and then kind of set it aside and then look at it a second, maybe a third time, to see what it does to you. What does it do for you? How does it make you feel? Does it calm you? Does it delight you, make you smile? Does it educate you? Does it anger you, spur you to action? So many different things. So we encourage and challenge you to give that a try, and we guarantee that your experience with art will be much more meaningful and enriching. So thank you for your interest in Unity's art and for coming to our program. And just we want to let you know that the art on the walls here, of course, is the Congregational Art Exhibit. There will be a reception this Sunday from 1 to 3, and most of the artists will be here, and we'd love to have you join us. So thank you so much.